Alrighty, so welcome everybody for joining us this morning. Just in case you've just bounced in there, we are set up as a meeting, so you do have control of your microphone and video, and it'll make it easier for us to ask questions at the end, a little bit more informal, I suppose, if we do it that way. But we are recording it so that we can share it on our YouTube channel, because I've suddenly realised this morning that, of course, some local authorities don't allow Zoom. So it might be quite handy for people who have only discovered that at the last minute if we record it. The aim this morning is to tell you a little bit about the organisation, what we offer and what we've learned from families. But maybe before I start, I'll let you know who I am in case you've not met me. My name is Paula Gilhooly and I'm the Education Advisor for Adoption UK Scotland. I'm an adoptive parent and I'm a support for learning teacher. And I'm joined this morning by Denise. Denise, do you want to say a wee bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm the Business Development Manager for Adoption UK, so I oversee a number of services. And I am an adoptive mum of 2 teenage girls who are both asleep in bed.
Unlike my teenage daughter who had to go to school this morning and is not very happy about it. I think we might be joined by another colleague later on. I don't think she's on the call yet, but Amy will join us in a wee while and talk about
I'm here, Paula.
There we go. Amy, do you want to say who you are?
I will do. My name's Amy Lane. I am part of the Foundations for Families project, which I'll talk about a little later on. But I work with kinship carers and their families.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. So that's basically the format of what we're going to have a wee look at this morning. Hopefully it won't be too long, and there'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions or share any thoughts that you have. Denise?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick introduction to the organisation. So we've been around for over 50 years. We had our 50th birthday. It was started by a group of adoptive parents who were struggling to find the support and understanding that their families needed. And it's grown since then. In the last 4 years, we've also started working with kinship families as well. So the focus has always been on supporting families. It's through the helpline, advice and information and empathy. There have been community events, trainings for professionals and parents. And we've always been an organisation that seeks to support. So we're not an adoption agency, and we've never been involved in matching children with families. Although we started as an organisation to support adoptive families, more recently it's expanded massively, the organisation. So we'll talk through that as we go. We've got UK-wide offices, so we've got an office in England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. So very much to understand the Scottish landscape. And if you want to know where we are, we're in Edinburgh, down at Leith, if you're ever wanting to drop in and see us. Although much of our staff team are still adoptive parents, we have got a growing number of people who've got lived experience of the care system on the staff too. So people that have been in kinship care or people who've been adopted as well. So just trying to expand really and grow that breadth of experience that we've got. Right. If you could click on, Paula. This is just an overview of, and you're not probably going to be able to go through that and have a look at it all right at this moment, but it gives an overview of the range of different services for adoptive families. So I've got a similar slide for kinship. There's lots of different services, and this morning we're going to talk about some of those key services that might be useful to you within the school and for you to be able to refer families onto. But what we'll do is make sure that you get a copy of these slides, and if we could do the next one as well, Paula. That's one for kinship slides as well, and it tells you, whether it's a self-referral process or a referred process. It tells you whether it's universal or in particular areas. So this really gives you sort of real overview of those services. But we will share that with you and make sure that you get the copy of those slides as we go on. So I was just going to start off with talking about the information and advice, and this might be something that people are aware of. We've got a helpline which is open from 10 till 2:30 Monday to Friday. We've got people can call at if they've just had a really bad drop off at school. They might want somebody just to talk to. They might be struggling with how that feels, or it might be that people are looking for advice on particular advice on as prospective adopters, or they might be looking at really any kind of advice that from there in the helpline. The helpline are people that take the helpline are very experienced and very well trained to be able to support. And if a ring back is required, then we're happy to do that as well. Enhanced ring backs, particularly around education, are available, and that's Paula that will talk a little bit more about that. So she will actually make those ring backs, but also if you're looking for behavioural issues or anything like that, then we'd make sure that we support in that way. There's a couple of websites that we run. So we run adoption.scot for the Scottish Government. It's a sort of gateway for all information advice. And we also have our own organisational website, adoptionuk.org. So there are another two places you can go to seek information and advice. We've got a range of fact sheets, and we tend to come up with fact sheets as well. So they're developed all the time. If again, they are sitting on adoptionuk.org, if people want to have a little look at that. We've got social media channels, so to keep in touch with us, we've got Facebook and Instagram. That people can join and get information about what's happening, so maybe in their area or events that are happening. There's a YouTube channel which we use to put up certain sort of training information, similar to this. And then we attend partner events as well. So we work with people like the Scottish Adoption Register, Who Cares Scotland. Quite often we're asked to come along and take stands and just share that information there. And I've got fact sheets twice, so I've done very well there. Community support. This again, something that a real sort of origins of where we came from. It's one of our key strengths, I would say, is really it can be incredibly powerful for people to be around people who get what you're going through at the time. So we run family events, we run online and face-to-face meetings through community groups in local neighbourhoods as well. And they really do offer a lot of support. So like I say, for adults, they might come along. They tend to be family events. So for adults, they might come along and just be able to speak to other adults that are going through similar things. And for the children and young people, really important that they're able to make some friends with other adopted people and have that real sort of feeling of community there. Last week, we held our annual residential for families. It was down at Whiston Lodge. I don't know if people know Whiston Lodge, but a great outdoor centre. We had about 90 people there. And it's just great to see children sort of hook up again with other children that they've known for years. So my own kids have gone. They've got the same friends that they've known for the last sort of 10 years. And they don't see them very often, but they always catch up with them at Whiston or other events through the year. We've got picnics, barbecues, really we try to keep it as simple as we can, just to help make it an easy day, I suppose. We've had a lot of great feedback from those events from parents and kinship carers who just say, it's really nice to speak to people that get it. It's really good to hang out together. So that's the community support. Paula, I'm going to pass back to you.
I think the comment actually for me that had me in tears the other week was somebody had described going back to Whiston for the second time as coming home. And there was that real, I suppose, security that people have. And when your life can be quite hard and there's maybe quite a lot of struggles in your day-to-day life, that's a really very powerful feeling, and one that I completely got. In terms of education, which is really my area, we've got two kind of services. We've got the Universal Education Service, where anybody can access the supports that we've got. So we have an education part to our website. We have it on our kinship.scot website as well as the Adoption UK website, and you'll find help sheets, blogs, video presentations, and it's a really good starting point for either a professional looking for a little bit of adoption information or for a family looking for a little bit of support. We've got a newsletter that goes out termly. We've got education discussions that are a bit like these, but they're a mixture of kind of themed events for families and for professionals. There's always a wee bit of a presentation followed by an opportunity to chat to each other. And those are usually, well, the presentation part is recorded so that people can watch them later. We've got our Let's Learn Together booklet, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, which is a great resource for families and professionals. It covers pretty much everything I think that you need to know about supporting children who are care experienced when they are at school. And it's available to download from the website. We also offer an enhanced element to that. Denise talked about the callbacks that we offer through the helpline. For our families who come in to us looking for support through other areas of the organisation, I would offer what's called an education consultation, which is open to families and professionals, where we would discuss the child's needs. We would look at what was in place for them already, and we would kind of talk around what more we might be able to put into place for that particular child using, I suppose, all the knowledge that we've built up over a period of time. And hopefully through that process, we can help some teachers reframe some of the difficulties that they might be seeing, and we can support families too. We offer some support with school meetings. We help families to prepare for planning meetings. We might be able to send somebody with them as an advocate. And we also have for our members a huge catalogue of webinars that can be accessed at any point, and you can kind of search by a particular theme. I think, well, at some point last year, it was well over 250 webinars that we had covering a huge range of things.
I'll talk about the e-project. So the e-project is relatively new for us. So we've run it for about the last 3 years, the e-project. And it's around enabling care experienced children and young people to be heard, really, and taken seriously in decisions which affect them. So there's 2 staff members who work on the e-project. They're both care experienced. We've got Carol, who is our community engagement lead, and Fiona, who's our employability support worker. And they know how important it is to meet other people and to be able to talk about the things that matter to them, to the children. So that's really focused around that. There's participation groups, and they're online, the groups at this moment. Well, they're online, then we have some face-to-face. So we have the 4 groups are under 9s, 10 to 14s, 14 to 17, and then 18 plus. But depending where, if people have got friends in certain groups, then we would move that around as well. They work with children and young people to co-design all the participation and engagement activities that they're involved in. And they are currently working on an e-zine, an e-zone magazine, which is around building skills, building confidence, and building friendships. So they've assigned the children and the young people different roles. So we've got photographers, we've got copywriters, we've got interviewers, all working on that e-zine for launch in November as well. What we really want to do is use all the experience and the views that we hear from this project as well to inform and involve other projects that we do, and also around policies and procedures, just making sure that we're getting the best possible service for the children and young people, but using the most creative and engaging activities that we can for that, and allowing sort of different learning styles and ways of working as well. That's the e-project.
We also, through Adoption UK, run the FASD hub. And given that the UK has got the 4th highest rate of alcohol consumption in pregnancy in the world, FASD may be the most common neurodevelopmental condition in the UK. And the likelihood of FASD could be as much as 4 times more likely in the care experienced population. And I think for me, that's really important for us as educators when we consider the needs of this group of people. Trauma is one aspect that we maybe look at, but we also have to keep in the back of our head the possibility, particularly in terms of adoption, the possibility of prenatal alcohol exposure, even when it's not recorded within notes. I think that's the kind of thing that comes through for us when we talk to families. And although FASD is not widely diagnosed, it is a lifelong neurodevelopmental condition, and we know that the prognosis is very positive with early intervention and support. You don't need a diagnosis to benefit from the support that the FASD Hub offer. We can offer support to families at any point of their journey, and we support families who are biological families, as well as families that are families through adoption, fostering, or kinship. We have a new programme running for adults through the FASD Hub that's led by Carol, our community lead. Carol is also an adult with FASD. Like the other services that we have, FASD offers a tiered level of support to families. There is a helpline with amazingly experienced staff. We've got a website, an FASD website that is absolutely chock full of resources and advice. They have a significant social media presence. There's an enhanced level of direct support for parents, carers, and professionals, which includes the one-to-one support, training, and community programs, community groups. The FASD Hub also offers it also offers the same kind of supports that our PATH programme offers, which we'll come back to in a wee bit, and that's open to biological, adoptive, fostering, or kinship families. It's a huge, huge resource. And one of the things I want to highlight about FASD is that we're just coming to the end of FASD month, and we have produced a massive amount of resources, new resources that have come out this month. They are fabulous. Among them was the A to Z of FASD, which is available to Adoption UK members in Scotland. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it covers everything from confabulation to spiky profile. And the A to Z is a mix of video resources and information sheets. It's a phenomenal resource. And I think for me as a support for learning teacher as well, FASD is not something that I'm seeing as widely diagnosed in school in front of me, but it's something that the more I know about, the more I begin to recognise perhaps the symptoms in the kids that I'm working with. So I think it would be a fantastic resource for you to have a look at. Denise?
Yeah, just I don't know how many people, and this is maybe a well-kept secret, unfortunately, the Kinship Care Advice Service for Scotland, or KCAS as we call it. So it used to be run by the Citizens Advice Bureau, and we took over the running of it about 4 years ago. And it's Scottish Government funded advice service for Scotland, so we cover the whole of Scotland, and it provides advice, resources, and training for kinship carers. We also endeavour to raise the awareness and work with social workers and health and social care practitioners to support kinship care practices across local authorities as well. So a lot of work being done with the practitioners, but the helpline there is for anybody who's kinship caring or about to start kinship caring, whether it's an informal or a formal arrangement there. It's a free helpline. It can offer, on that helpline, we can offer benefit checks for people, very important for our kinship carers and the work that we do around making sure that people are getting the correct benefits, but also legal checks as well to make sure that things are being done in a way that's most suited to the child there as well. Many calls to the helpline are from carers who are struggling to know what supports they're entitled to and how to access them. Both professionals and carers can use the service. There's also kinships.scot, so www.kinship.scot, The website is excellent. It's got a lot of good resources. It's got the education resources on it as well in there, but also things, like I said, about finances and about legal status as well there. Right, if you could just pass on to the next slide. Thank you. This is maybe really useful for people when you're dealing with families that are just coming in, starting out in a situation where they're going to end up being kinship carers. This booklet was devised by our advisory group. So that's the group who we work with to ensure that our service is suitable for kinship carers and doing what they need. It's made up of kinship carers. And they said, actually, what we're really lacking is when, and you know, the stories of just your children being arriving in the middle of the night and being passed over to grandparents or families, and then kind of left to get on with it. And they said, we need something that helps people when that happens. So this is the What Now booklet, is like something that was actually independent, so didn't come from the social worker, actually came from the Kinship Care Advice Service, and helps people sort of navigate those early stages as well. We're currently working on a pilot project with 4 local authorities to develop an enhanced level of support for kinship carers. And I'm going to pass on to Amy to speak about this.
Hello, thanks, Denise. So Foundations for Families is a pilot project, as Denise said, which will build on the successful therapeutic and education support services models that is currently known as Pathways. It was previously known as TESA, and also build on the amazing work that the Kinship Care Advice Service provides as well. So Foundations for Families, we hope to develop a pilot and a new approach which improves and enables the identification and referral of kinship families at the earliest point of contact. So the pilot will be split into 3 main sections, one being therapeutic support, where families will be able to access. So it will be a referral process where they're accessing therapeutic strand of support, which includes peer support, where they're supported by somebody who's been through some of the issues that they will be coming across. Another is the fantastic education support that Paula already currently provides, but we're looking at developing that further, looking at training for local authorities as well, and different supports for individual families. The last strand is community support, which is really important for families, is to look at how they can be supported within their local area by other kinship families. We're looking at developing groups, at putting on things like family events, creating peer support networks. There are lots of different things that we're looking to develop, but the biggest kind of point that we want to raise is that this will be a project that will be co-designed and co-created alongside kinship families. So it's not just us coming along and saying, this is what we think you need, and kind of putting it in place, but we need to hear what are the issues for families in their local areas and how we can support them with those. The programme's going to be strengthened by the external evaluation from our partners in AFCA. So we're hoping that it'll go from strength to strength. We're at the very early stages at the moment, but I should say that the 4 local areas that we will be working with this year will be East Lothian, Mid Lothian, North Ayrshire and Aberdeenshire. So if you are working in any of those areas, please do get in touch. Hopefully I'll be in touch with you sooner. But if you would like to get in touch to access some of the support, please just drop Paula or myself an email. Thank you very much. Paula, am I passing on to you?
Yeah, you are. I think it's me for a wee while now, so I apologise because I think I'm talking for a wee bit now. PATH is our early intervention programme that helps adoptive parents to achieve better outcomes for their children by giving them access to a clinical psychologist and peer support. It provides adoptive parents with the understanding, skills and support to help the child begin to recover from early childhood trauma. And it's founded on the principle of helping families and not fixing children. The aim is to help families enjoy their life and to appreciate and also to help parents to appreciate their strength as a parent and their children's strengths as well. And as they go through the programme, I think we see parents' ability to work alongside professionals. It also helps parents to understand their right to support and to increase their resilience. And you can see on the screen there where you would put in a referral and a little bit more information, because the PATH programme is kind of based on the programme that we had previously, which was our TESA programme. And the way that kind of PATH works is PATH is accessed through a referral from a social worker, partly because post-adoption support is a statutory requirement. It's not suitable for families in crisis. It's an early intervention programme that's suitable when the needs are kind of low to medium. The core supports of PATH are very similar to what Amy has just talked about. There's support from peer support, the clinical psychologist support, and participation in 6 parent reflective sessions led by the psychologist or the lead therapist. And it's the use of that parent partner that is really very important to our families. It's an experienced, in this case, adoptive parent who supports and advises the adopters that are having a little bit of difficulty. They benefit from their advice. And all of this builds knowledge and understanding of the child. It builds knowledge and understanding about the family dynamic and creates a sense of belonging and enjoyment in family life. So basically, the programme kind of gets families through the tough challenges that they might be facing at a particular moment. And the clinical psychologist is able to give a really comprehensive explanation of the child's needs that unpacks issues and suggests approaches, while also at the same time validating the parent's strengths and abilities. They also write a report, which some parents choose to share with school. I think it's an absolutely fabulous resource that we offer. Most families' needs are met through that core element of PATH, but for some families who need something extra, we also have an enhanced tier of support that is available for those families who need it too. And the feedback from parents who've been through the programme is great. You can't underestimate the power of talking to somebody who just gets it. And we know that through all of the community events that we do. We're told that time and time again. Being an adoptive parent, and I really get this one myself, is a bit like being a detective, and having the clinical psychologist able to link the present behaviours that you see with past experience can really help to reframe the behaviours that you see and make sure that families are full of empathy and the connection stays strong. And having that close partnership between professionals and parents with the confidence of your parent partner can really help adoptive parents to open up about the challenges that they might be facing. And what we would really like to see, and I know that Amy really wants to see this as well, is to see schools talking to kinship families and adoptive families about how Adoption UK could support them, either through the community supports that we've got, through training, or through that PATH referral system. We know that it can be really hard for families to admit that they're having difficulty. So we're here we're not connected with social services. We're here purely as a support for families, and to a certain extent for schools. And the other thing that I wanted to do today was to just share. I think I've got about no more than 10 minutes of things to share from adoptive families, and I hope, because of the team that you work in, a lot of what I say you'll be like, yep, I know that. But there might be something here that's useful for you as well. And if there's not, then that's fine too. We do work really closely with our adoptive and kinship families, and they do influence the things that I'm going to share with you. And the first one is that when we talk about trauma, it kind of glosses over a lot of the nitty-gritty. So for our most complex learners, we need teachers to know what has happened to the child and how it has affected their physiology and their neurology. We need teachers to understand, and hopefully you do, we need all teachers to understand that a child's current behaviour and development is a normal reaction to the things that they have experienced. So if a 5-year-old has had 5 different caregivers before the age of 2, they've been beaten, starved, sexually abused, then their perception of the world, their brain wiring, their sensory system is going to be very different to a child who's had a normal, healthy development. And the words childhood trauma, they gloss over the potential impact and triggers of those other words that I have just used. That 5-year-old child is likely to need specific attention paid to developing connections and attachments and safety with an adult before they can settle to learn with a class. That child is going to likely to need infant nurture, and it requires an out-of-the-box thinking and alternative practices to a traditional primary 1 environment. So for us as adoptive parents, when we speak with professionals, we might be told we need to encourage the use of a dummy. We're encouraging using milk in a bottle. We're encouraging swaddling, and we're being told to avoid tones that are overly stern or perceived that way. And that's a big step away from what we might use with a child who's had a really healthy start to life, and we wouldn't be expecting to see any of those things in a child age 5. And the other thing is that adopted children, they carry huge amounts of shame, and the slightest raised voice or look can send a child into survival mechanisms so that learning doesn't take place, and you will know that. The effects of trauma mean hypervigilance, cortisol and adrenaline remain present even when our kids are resting. So it doesn't take very much to push them over the edge. And then the other thing I think that is really important to know is that other children are threats when the child doesn't feel safe or connected to the adult. And that's why we can see kids having some difficulty, I think, particularly at playtimes. Another thing that our families tell us is that their child's development has gaps and shaky foundations, and you will know that. We know that these gaps need to be addressed to allow children to grow and develop, and that we need to be mindful how we do this. So families and young people tell us that they need to feel safe. They need to build relationships with adults before being able to branch out from the secure base with peers. And having a connection and access to a key adult in school is fundamental. And this has got to be someone that children have regular access to, and that they feel connected to, and that they like. Children benefit from nurture and mentoring programs throughout the whole transition process, and certainly from day 1 at high school. I think I have spent more time talking to families this last year of children who have moved into high school and have really struggled, and who have then opted out and are not attending. From my point of view, we need to have that safe adult, almost like a nurture program in place from day 1. Our kids, they need safe havens, they need places to go during break and lunchtime, and they probably need an adult to sweep them up and get them to that group. Adopted adults tell us that these are the times when their threat system were most active in school. Statistics tell us to screen for neurodiverse conditions. Again, I've already talked about prenatal alcohol being a feature in children's early life, and it can go unidentified because it wasn't noted in paperwork, because we don't talk about who drinks during pregnancy. Interrupted development can affect executive function skills, which means that otherwise bright, articulate children find it difficult to achieve in school. You will know that. They need support remembering basic tasks, homework books, directions, and it can be really difficult for families if there isn't good home-school communication in place, and that school expect a teenager to be independent when they're just not quite there yet. And we can have really high expectations of our children, but they maybe need more flexible timescales than peers who don't have those barriers to learning. All children need the same things to thrive: a stable home, strong support, and steady loving relationships. For a child adopted at birth, we need to acknowledge the trauma of adoption itself, as well as the fact that pre-birth trauma can have a lasting consequence in terms of neurological development. And the support we offer as education staff, as health staff, as community support needs to take account of that. Everything is not fine just because it was those early days. And we have professionals, we have parents or carers tell us that they're sometimes viewed as anxious by teachers. And I think the reality is that an adoptive parent has done extensive parenting training. Even before the child first comes to you, you've done lots of training, and then it doesn't stop there. For a lot of adoptive parents, it will keep going, and they know what their child has been through. And they may well have also been on a neurodevelopmental journey with their child and have amassed a lot of knowledge and developed skills along the way, particularly when we're looking at digging into FASD. And sometimes they're parenting a child whom professional services say they no longer have the skills to work with, yet the parent is still doing the parenting. So I think for me, we have to make room for these parents in the discussions that we have. Please don't undervalue what they've got to offer. Our barometer research and lived experience on the helpline tells me that neurodiversity is higher among the care experience population, certainly within adopted circles. FASD 4 times more likely, and at the highest, I think, in those children who've been adopted. There is a high chance of additional support needs being present in the history of biological parents, and the more complex the needs of the child, the greater the chance there is that there is no diagnosis or the diagnosis is incomplete. And maybe some of that is coming from my kind of lived experience there too. In the case of FASD, it's about the 3rd time I've said this, there might be no record of alcohol consumption in the medical notes. Our message, I think, is clear as parents: assume neurodevelopmental assessments are required. The outlook for all children who've got an early diagnosis with the right support is positive. And with the right support, our children are going to thrive. We need to dig a wee bit deeper, I think, than just trauma. We ask that teachers audit the curriculum for triggers and adapt their approaches. Does it have to be taught? Could it be taught a different way? How can you increase felt safety during this time? Is there a planned exit strategy for those children who need a get out? All of us perform better when we feel safe and regulated, and our children might still need adult help to achieve the feeling of safety and regulation. So, for example, in a class that's studying a family, perhaps say in an RE class, then a simple Microsoft form that surveys the whole class before the topic might highlight vocabulary that you need to avoid or include, or areas of sensitivity for particular children, and maybe have a look at who needs an exit strategy. Because I think what we hear from our kids is that there are sometimes little triggers within their daily content at particularly high school that can be difficult for them. And again, the texts we use in school often feature characters exposed to trauma or feature negative stereotypes of children in care. We take this information on in our unconscious bias, and it affects care experienced children in all aspects of them. So we ask that schools audit their texts and lessons to ensure that children are not made to feel different or exposed. There is no need for an adopted child to read, "Your mum didn't want you, not your real one. My dad says you're lucky." Misinformation is damaging and it perpetuates myths. Adoption and abuse features in so many stories. Be mindful of what you choose to read and watch in school, and perhaps that's a task that, if you have a care experience community in your local authority, they could take on the responsibility of auditing a curriculum and feeding back to staff members. When there is no choice but to teach something that's going to be difficult, then prepare the family and the child so that they know what's coming and take on board their responses. Question the narrative. And we've got a talking about adoption fact sheet that I'll send round afterwards as well, because it helps if we can help educate the general public about adoption and be more supportive in conversation. And again, it's something that comes through particularly from families whose kids are at secondary school. All children want to belong and feel connected. It's particularly complex during adolescence when children are finding their own identity. For our children, there's an extra layer of difficulty. Not only is the family situation more complex, but there might also be complications of different nationalities, different cultures. There might be complications due to attachment styles. All of these things make this whole period a bit trickier for kids. So we ask that educators recognise the difficulties of identity as normal, healthy part of processing identity and adoption and kinship, but one that is really difficult for our young people nonetheless, and for their families. So we need to provide support when it's needed by providing mentors, providing counselling, giving them space to think, making their access to an adult that the child connects to. Recognise these different factors that pressurise our young people, and as an educator, stay connected to the family, stay connected to the adoptive and the kinship families. Be open with them, keep them informed, and remind them that, you know, that communities like Adoption UK or Who Cares Scotland, we exist to support families during these times and their young people. I've already mentioned the stigma that care experience children face, and these are some of the comments that our young people have shared with us. Again, we ask that you take on board, I think, the cumulative impact of repeated comments in instances where a child in an adoptive or kinship family might have lashed out. Look at the bigger picture of need and not the one kind of single point of escalation, and maybe have a look at your anti-bullying policies and make sure that, that these things are included. All children benefit from stability and routine, and some children find change to routine really threatening. So we need to kind of take those things on board. We know that children do better with early intervention, so make sure families have got advance notice, predict the responses based on your prior knowledge of the child, and prepare support in advance. And let's not punish kids who can't cope if there has been a change to routine. Every child needs to feel safe and connected to thrive in school. For children whose nervous systems are on a high alert and they need more safety cues than other children, things like being called on to give an answer, being called to speak out to a teacher, or expected to change for PE in front of others. These are the kind of things that can make a child feel threatened and trigger survival responses. And we can reduce anxiety by helping that child to feel held in school, to make them feel grounded and safe in adult relationships. They need that kind of nurture experience. They need an advocate, especially in high school. And investing time at the beginning of the school day, the end of the school day, the beginning of the school year can pay dividends overall. Our children are likely to still need co-regulation and connection as teens, even more so as they're at that crucial stage of exploring identity. And again, in terms of FASD, we often talk about a spiky profile. So your child might be 12 or 13 physically, but they might have much lower living skills or much lower receptive language skills, and yet they might appear quite advanced in another area. So we've got to be really open, particularly when we think about the exposure to prenatal alcohol, and take on board those difficulties for kids as they go through secondary school. And again, that transition to S1 can be a really big trigger for feelings of loss and those old coping mechanisms. they rise up at the start of first year. So I think if you're supporting secondary school staff, looking at the package of support that goes into place for care experienced kids at the beginning of that sort of transition period is really important. And we know that stable homes and loving relationships are the foundation. Every child needs to thrive. Adoptive and kinship families do this very well for our kids, but they do also need our support to maintain their stamina. So where children's needs are complex, parenting or teaching can be exhausting. And for families who can't access support or don't feel able to, the parent may end up overwhelmed and exhausted. And none of us operate when we've reached that point. None of us operate well. And that's where we might see families in compassion fatigue. We need someone to be able to listen to us, to ease our load until we're strong enough to manage on our own again. And that's where the community supports come in. What we need is understanding, support and respite. We need professionals to recognise that when services disengage because our child's needs are too complex or we can't get them to their service, it's the parent who has to forge on. And that's where I think you and I can work together, where Adoption UK and virtual school teams can work together to support families. You can make sure that all schools know that we exist, and that those people involved in child planning meetings know that we exist and what we can offer. And we can then provide support alongside the support that you already provide. And hopefully families are more likely to be able to weather those really difficult times. And very last slide. This is a new resource that's gone up onto our two websites. They've gone up onto the Kinship website and the Adoption UK website. That's sprung up from the conversations that I've had with adoptive families. It's pretty much a list of everything that's been suggested to me over the different years in terms of providing support for children in school. It's not a toolkit or an explanation of why something's important. It's just really a checklist of things that I think if you have an adopted child or a child in kinship in your class, have a look through this list, tick off the things that you've already done, that you've already got in place. If you see your child is still struggling, is there something on this list that you could try? And there are some embedded links to, if you do want further information on something, there's like a little 5-minute video that's very powerful. There's the Let's Learn document that's really very powerful. And the idea is that families and school staff could kind of look through this list and just see if there's anything. Some of the things are really small that you could put into place, and maybe some of the other things might require a little bit more effort. And I will circulate these things afterwards. So you will be very glad to hear that I'm going to stop talking now.